Welcome to episode 2 of Charting Creation. In this episode, I will be speaking about the paper Ideological Vandalism of Public Art Statues, Copyright, the Moral Right of Integrity and Racial Justice from 2022 by Marie Hadley, Sarah Hook and Nicholas Orr. This episode is my kind of first reading of the paper and my initial artistic reactions.
So I stopped reading the paper because I wanted to get down just some thoughts as I was reading now, rather than stopping and coming back. I'm taking notes as I go. So I'm only up to page 4. Whilst reading the introduction, and this might have something to do with the picture and the description, but I had a vision of a statue with red hands as an image. It could be quite powerful, or just a splash of red on something. I also was thinking about water balloons filled with paint as a bit of a personal idea, and the particular line in the introduction around purposeful displacement of symbolic objects for political means, and I kind of stopped there and dwelled on that for a little bit, and then I was thinking more about that, and also the kind of conversation around my own work with statues, and kind of immediately after making Tear It Down and it becoming fairly popular, and a few conversations around it, there was a curator who was talking to me about doing a whole show of images of statues being torn down or being modified in that way, and I was thinking more about that, and my immediate reaction was no, this is not something I want to do, and that's not at all a direction of my work that I would probably ever take, is this similar image all the time. And whilst since then I have done a couple of other statue works for commissions or for personal projects, it's not a direction that my work will always take. And I was thinking around the reasoning for that more is that the reason I'm not making additional statue works is because I feel potentially activism actually gives more credence and symbolic gravitas to these as colonial symbols, maybe in kind of pushing against them in this way, maybe it's actually working against what we're trying to say as artists when we work in this way artistically with these statues, where we're making political art that talks about them being this colonial symbol and that we shouldn't be doing that. We're giving them more gravitas than they deserve. But I mean, that's kind of, I think that's a bit of a mute thought as well, because they are there and they've been placed there by the dominant societal power structure, and so they already have an implied power to anyone who is not a part of that dominant power structure, which kind of brought me to this image within my head that I'd really like to work with a little bit more, of a statue sort of rusting, and I know traditionally these statues are made with bronze, and so it doesn't degrade very quickly in metal, making things with metal specifically so it lasts a long time, bronze in particular. But this like image of a statue rusting and disintegrating under its own weight and like just blowing away in the wind is an image that stuck with me, and I wanted to kind of get that out. I stopped again during my reading of the paper because there are a few particular lines that resonate with me around the statue, and particularly around graffitiing of statues. But there's a line that says, where symbolic statue breaking is a regular mode of advertising the inauguration of new regimes, the counter monument not only serves as a powerful repudiation of the race's past, it is socially significant activism that offers opportunities to shape and humanize the city. I found that really interesting as a kind of case, well, as a takeaway from the work and the thinking on what I was kind of where my brain was last night with it around us giving these statues power, but we also are giving us power by taking away that, or giving movements power by taking away that and defacing them, or changing them, and the idea around generating political movement through the changing of how statues are depicted in common space is a really, I think, interesting place to explore. I think particularly with the scene that I was looking at in Tear It Down, that scene is about a political movement rising up and taking back Australia from this current dominant white nationalist sort of society that we're currently in, and that pulling down of that statue in that piece is a symbolic moment of the hopeful change that takes place. And I think in writing that scene, what I was going for was that this is the organization of that movement, and this is what this is inspired by the dominant society, because they have put those statues there as a reminder that they're in control. So they have actually they've inspired this counter movement, this counter monument. They've built their own destruction into their political movements because they are not inclusive of everyone. They are exclusive, and they create power structures that benefit themselves. So the symbolic tearing of them down is a really interesting kind of place narratively, but also for me narratively, because that's what my focus is in this, is that I'm trying to create something that looks to a future where we can do this. My whole work is speculative fiction, whereas socially and politically, what we've seen where that happens is that maybe things don't necessarily change, and it is just potentially regime change, where a different power structure comes into place and just replaces the previous power structure. Neither power structure is, I guess, the good guys in a lot of those cases, because they are just replacing power structures with a different power structure. So I'm back again to talk about the ordering of laws and how like, because I find that a really interesting kind of part of the paper where it talks about how criminal law is placed above the IP rights in relation to like charging an offender for something like graffitiing a public statue, and the reason being that it's a deterrent. It's a deterrent to future people doing it. It does become, for me, like, because of the way that the laws are ordered, and some laws are given prominence over others, and more and as such, like, it makes it okay to ignore some laws depending on who you are. It's just interesting, like, how the hidden rules around laws, and like there isn't a roadmap. These laws and the people who make them, but then also the people who use them and wield them against other people, like, they know the rules, and half of them, you know, they know how to get around certain rules and use those to their advantage, and the people who are often getting charged with these things don't have a literacy around these rules of society. So we have these, like, these unwritten, hidden ordering to the hierarchy of laws and the structures and how we use them. But if they're used against someone, if they're wielded against someone who doesn't have an understanding of them, then, like, it's inherently an unjust system. There's a particular line on page 20 that I wanted to kind of pick up on, where it says the engagement with the artwork is only a violation to the authorial interests vested in the source work. The creation and reception of the counter-monument is irrelevant. And I think, like, I feel like this is kind of pointing towards something like that I've been thinking about as I've been reading, is that shouldn't there be IP rights kind of ascribed to the graffiti in itself and the street art in itself as art as well? Although even though the very nature of that is that it is temporary, but they're like, in so much as the IP rights apply to something over here, they can't then not be applied to something over there just because the dominant societal structures is choosing to apply them here and not there. It seems like an unjust imbalance of application.